What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Hector T. Today, we're doing a valve cover gasket replacement. Now, the car in question is a 2004 Nissan Altima 3.5 liter engine, but this does also apply to other vehicles. You can do, it's pretty much the same process on the Altimas, the Maximas, Muranos, I think the Frontiers, Xteras, anything with the VQ35 engine, it's going to be pretty much the same or very close and similar to it. But as you can see, this Altima is the VQ35 that Nissan loves using all over the place. And it's pretty simple to do. It's just kind of tedious because we got a lot of work that we got to do. So right off the bat, as you can see, the first bank is going to be a lot easier to get to. The second bank is where we're going to have some trouble. Now, basically, what we're going to need to do is we're going to have to take off the whole intake plenum here and get to the second bank, which is underneath the whole intake plenum. Now, this is not that hard to do. I'm going to show you how to do it step by step. But like I said, it is a bit of a tedious job, and it does take some time. So make sure that, when you're doing this, that you have the time for it, because it's not like other cars where it's quick and easy. This does take time. There's a lot going into this. But of course, before we get started, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell notifications, so that way you don't miss out on any other videos going forward. But let's go ahead and dive into it. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and loosen the battery terminal, because we want the battery disconnected, since we're going to be actually taking apart and unplugging some of the electronic components. So we want to make sure that the battery's disconnected. The next thing is we're going to actually go ahead and free up some space by removing the rain cover and this bracket right here in front of the firewall. Now that's going to give us more space to get behind here, to get some of the bolts that are behind there in the bracket that's holding onto that. So to remove that, don't mind the cicada bugs, we got to go ahead and pop these little covers off. There's actually a nut underneath to take off the windshield wipers. Alright, so for the windshield wipers, it's going to be a size 14, which fits nice and snug. So you just want to go ahead and loosen the bolts. This one labeled D for the driver's side. This one labeled A for the passenger side. It's the longer arm. The driver's side is the shorter arm. And then once you loosen off the bolts, they actually just go ahead and pull off. There you go. It might be a little bit snug, but they just come right out. There's one. There's two. So after that, then you want to get a flathead, and you want to pull these out, these little plastic push screws, push pin kind of things. There's one here, that one's broken, but there's one here, there's one there, and then on the other, you should have one here, and then one here. Now, when you remove this, you also want to go ahead and remove from here the hose for the windshield wiper fluid, because it's routed from the tank down there. Well, that's the coolant, but down there, up around, and onto the hood. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off, take these, and then it pulls right up. Alright, so once you got the push pins out, there's a little piece of rubber in the corner that holds it under the fender. You just got to pop that out from it, because it digs underneath the fender. And then push it, because it's just pushing pins all the way across. And actually, once it's out, yeah, remember, this is just rubber, so it'll bend without breaking or anything. It's just, it digs underneath the fender. Okay, I need two hands, but okay, you got it out. There goes the rubber piece. That thing's really in there. But that's the whole plastic cover. That's the little sealer piece right there. Alright, so now we have the metal frame underneath that we're going to remove to give us more space back there. Because see, that's how far back the firewall is. So with this gone, this metal bracket, we got a lot more space. Alright, so the bolts for this bracket are going to be a 10 millimeter. There we go, 10. And basically the ones you need to take off are here by the strut tower, here back on the frame, down here by the motor rig for the windshield wipers. There's one down there that I already took off. One down here that you gotta take off. And then on the other side, why is it blurry? There we go. On the other side, another one here, here, there, 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 and I believe, yeah, that's it. Yeah, that one down there is for the arm, for the windshield wiper, or windshield wiper. Yeah, so it's gonna be those bolts. Once you take them off, like I said, they're 10. It's nice and snug. Then the whole thing just comes right out. So let's go ahead and take that out. I forgot one. It's actually right here, right down there where the socket is. It's in the corner. I forgot that one. Yeah. Alright, so once you got all the bolts out, this whole bracket does come off. It's a little bit snug in the middle, so you gotta finagle it a little bit. But it's a little bit easier with two hands, but there you go. So now, with this out, see, now we have much more space to get to the intake and everything back there. So much easier. Alright guys, so now the next part that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take off the whole intake system. Well, most of the intake system. Because we want to get to that back one first. Because that's the one that actually has the really bad leak. So we're going to start by removing the intake here and here up to the throttle body. Because the throttle body, this part, and this part are all combined. We could take all of that out at once. So that way we don't have to sit there and take them off each individual component, considering each one has a gasket. And while the gaskets on here are the original gaskets, so I would imagine I'd need to replace them. The only gasket I am going to take off is going to be the one here to the intake manifold on the secondary half, because you have to take it off here, this whole piece, and then there's a gasket here. This one I usually don't have any problems with the first time taking it off. It's usually the second or third time that you go to service it that's when you need to replace it. So right now I don't have any gaskets for the intake, so that's why I'm reducing as many gasket use as possible. So I only have to take off this part to take out this gasket, which I'm honestly just going to leave it. Might clean it up, but that's going to reduce the gasket use. Now of course, like I said, you have to take off the air intake tubing from here to here. We do have to take off the sensors, the electronic systems. We do have to move the harness, the wiring harness, off of this one eventually, but we have to take off the solenoid and these pressure sensors, as well as the vacuum hoses back here, and disconnecting that bracket back there. So let's go ahead and start by taking this off. Alright, and coming around the top, the sensor here, it's actually a 10 here. You don't even have to remove that one. It's just that one right there. That's a 10. The solenoid is going to be a 12 on here. A 10 for this sensor. A Phillips for that, but be very careful not to break this clip when you take this out. It is very flimsy. And then of course that power plug right there, that power plug right there, and that actually is going to have to come out. This hose right here, this one right here, that's on the top of the intake, because that goes to the valve cover, so we're going to take that off too. So we're actually just going to leave that actuator where it is, because once you remove the hoses, it's fine sitting on top of there where it is. So and make sure you leave the bolts so you don't lose them. I like to do that. Good practice, I guess. Alright, so behind the intake, we have this bolt, which holds the bracket line for the power steering line. And then deep back here, I'm going to see if I can try to get it. Let me see. I can't really get it in there. Alright, so right here, where this finger is, this one right here, there's one, and there's two. These are the bracket bolts that hold the back of the intake. Those are both 12 millimeters. As I can't get the camera in there, but you can get a short socket in there and take those out. They're both 12s. Ugh. And then once you get that off, then it's 12 on these, which should be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 for the loosening pattern. Alright guys, so now that we have the entire intake taken off, now as you can see we have much better access. We have full access to the second bank. I do want to wipe this down because that is a lot of oil and fuel on there. Probably just fuel, honestly, because it does mix in there a little bit. So I'm going to clean off this gasket because this gasket is still very good to use. It's just dirty, so I want to clean that, make it a better seal. So what we're going to do, we're going to start with the back one, back valve cover, because as you see that's the worst. It's got a lot of oil everywhere. So what we're going to do is we're going to move the wires. I'm going to tuck these wires into over here above the fuel rail. We're going to take out the coils and we're going to move those wires all over there. This blue wire, that's for the O2 sensor. We could probably leave that. However, that green one underneath, we're going to have to we'll probably have to move that because we have to move this solenoid. This solenoid is 10s, I do believe. Let me take a look. Yep, 10 millimeters to remove the solenoid, just those 3 bolts, which is also mirrored on this side. So we're going to move both solenoids, and we're going to move the coils. I do have new coils that I'm going to be putting in, because those are the original coils. These have already been replaced, so I'm just going to replace these and replace the old ones, because they're old. Now, I actually don't know when they replaced those, but I can tell you these are from factory because these are Denso and they've never been touched. Clearly. These ones have, but we're putting new ones anyways. There is this breather tube that you do have to disconnect from both sides, and there are 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bolts. They're all 10 millimeter. Same thing on this side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Once you get all those, and we move the wires. Now remember, we can't quite move the harness out of the way entirely because it goes from that side around the front, through the middle to that side. So we're just going to move it out of the way to get the valve covers off. So we're going to move all that stuff, take the valve covers off. I'm going to go ahead and start with the back one, and I'm going to go ahead and take that off now. Alright, so now that we have the valve cover off, we can actually see a couple of things that's going on here. First and foremost, these cams and lifters and everything in here are very dry, which means there has not been getting much oil into this bank. I don't know how long it's been drying out, but it's pretty dry. Even the camshaft position sensor is a little bit dry there. Another thing that we found is that all 3 of these tube seals, as you can see, there's oil in the tubes. That one the most. The tube seals have failed in the valve cover. Now, when you look at the valve cover, you can see there's a crack right there. Let's see, this one has a crack, and that one, somewhere along the line, has a crack. So oil has been seeping through, getting into the spark plugs. So those spark plugs are probably done, as well as those coils, which would make sense because this car has not been giving that good fuel economy at all. So technically it's been running on the front 3 cylinders and maybe maybe the middle, because that one's been dead. That's dead. I'm surprised I didn't get any codes for this car, because that one was the worst. It was flooded with oil. And we look at the gasket, and as you can see, it's got a gasket. It's got oil under and all around it. And right here are the coils with oil covered. You can't even see the metal coil inside of it. So we got to clean out all that oil. All right, so I have to get a wire brush so I can finish cleaning off to have a nice smooth clean mating surface. I got most of the gunk off. However, these spark plugs are done. Look at, let me show you. They're gone. That is caked in oil. There's no spark coming from these. I can tell you this one was from this one. I want to say that's cylinder number 1. That should be cylinder number 1. Was not firing. There's no chance that cylinder was firing, because if you look in, there's oil in the cylinder. It might actually be flooded with oil and gas. So I gotta get a straw and suck that out. It's pretty nasty stuff. This one has a little bit, this one has a little bit, not as much, but number 1, cylinder 1 is definitely really bad. So as it goes, it should be cylinder 1 was the worst, cylinder 2, cylinder 3 was okay, cylinder 4, cylinder 5 is okay, cylinder 6. So cylinder 1, I can tell you, was not firing. Been firing on 5 cylinders, not on 6, for I don't know how long. Can't tell you. Can't really tell you how long. Like I said, there's been no codes, which I might need to investigate the ECU, because that's weird that I have not gotten any codes, even though that cylinder has not been firing. So I gotta investigate that. That's a whole nother day though. But yeah, so these are original Denzos, never replaced. No spark coming from this one. The other 2, there was some grease, which is, I forget what it's called, but there's a grease that conducts electricity through it. I think that's the only way the other 2 were sparking, because they were covered in oil too. Yeah. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and clear the cylinders of whatever is in there. I got to get a wire brush to finish scraping that stuff off, make a nice clean mating surface, and then I'm going to go ahead and put on the new gasket and the valve cover. And when I get back, that's going to be on there. Those are going to be cleaned out. I'm going to put in new spark plugs, and I'm going to go over the torque specs, as well as trying to seal the tube seals and in the valve cover, because you gonna have to do it while the valve cover is on there. So let me go ahead and get all that done, and I will be right back. Alrighty, so I did have to close it up because it did rain a little bit. Typical Florida thunderstorm. However, I was able to actually seal the inside. So instead of putting the RTV on top, I put it in on the bottom side from inside of the valve cover. I pushed it all the way on so it would leak out all the excess, took it off, wiped it from the top here and from on top of the tubes, because it did get in some of the tubes. And now it's drying, and it should be able to cure and set by the time I need to run this engine. So it's sealed all the way around on the inside. Now some of it did come up through more and more spots than the other, but on the inside it is completely flush with the red RTV. And this is the high temp, because remember, it's going to be oil, it's going to be touching it, it's going to be sitting on top of the engine where all the heat goes, so you have to use the high temp one, or else it's just going to crumble and break. Alright, so now we're on to torquing down the valve cover. Now with the new, obviously with the new gasket, you'll see there's a nice big gap. Basically, the torque order, because the torque specs says 15 to 25, I am not doing that. Last time I did 25, the bolts broke. And I was on a different car. And I had to get those extracted and rethreaded. So I'm not doing that. No, this time they're going to be hand tightened and maybe to about 15. I'll pull out the torque wrench for that. So the order that I'm doing, tightening order, is the ends to the middle. So you go this one, then crosshatch to this corner, then the front corner, then the back corner, then the other front corner, and then crosshatch to this one, up to this one, then to that one. So to see it as a bigger picture, maybe too much movement. Now that I'm watching myself doing this. The sides first, doesn't matter which one. But I'm doing this one, so I could do this one. So then I could do this back corner, then the front corner, then that back corner, then the front corner, then the middle back, then the front middle, then the other front middle, and then the back middle. Or you could do the front middle, back middle, front middle, back middle, front middle. Either way, on the middle one, so it's fine. You just got to have a cross pattern. And you got to do opposites. So basically when you're tightening these, because I'm just going to do them one at a time. And I'm not doing it in order just so I can show you. Actually, let me go ahead and actually use just this. So while you're spinning this, you're going to feel some resistance, naturally, because that's the gasket. You want to actually just do a hand tight. Because that way the gasket can just smush in under each bolt. And I'm going to go ahead and do that for all the way around. Doesn't matter which order right now, you're just doing it a little bit tight. You're not torquing them down yet. So you want to do it until you feel the resistance and then just a little bit more. So that way that the new gasket gets smushed right in. And then we're going to go ahead and torque them. That. Cross pattern hatch. Whichever ones you want to start, it's up to you. Just make sure you do it on the sides. And then, like I said, I'm only going to torque them to about 10 to 15 pounds maximum. I am not going to 20, 25. That is insane. These bolts will break because they are very, very fragile. I do not recommend doing the manufacturer's torque specs. If this was brand new bolts, maybe. These are not brand new bolts. These are old. It's from 2004, and they are worn the hell out. I am not torquing them that much. 10 to 15 will be sufficient enough to get that gasket sealed and make sure no oil comes out. So let me go ahead and do that, and then we'll move on to the next step. Alright, so I do have my old-fashioned torque wrench. It is a click type. So right now I have it set to 15 foot-pounds. The reason I have it set to 15 is because I'm using the extension with it. You're not supposed to, because you will. It does lose a degree or two, which equals to like a few pounds, maybe 1 or 2 per degree. So it's gonna equal to about 10 to 15 pounds on the bolts, which is really all you really want, because I don't want to snap these, putting too much torque on them. So this is going to be the second stage of torquing. The first stage is just to get them hand tight, so that way, you know, they're set and ready to go. Second stage is where you actually put the torque pressure to it. And again, you want to start with the ends, do alternating corners, and that's it. Work from the outside to the inside. When you're loosening, from the inside to the outside, it's opposite. So you want to go ahead and do that. Let me do that, and then I'll go ahead and start reassembling everything back up. Alright, so now we got the valve cover installed, all the bolts torqued down, we got this breather back on, new ignition coils goes wrapped up. Remember, this goes on, this little clip here attaches to the clip behind on the back of the intake manifold. So So that's why that's just gonna chill there for now. And that actually gets plugged into this big one off the harness. Now when putting in the solenoid, remember that it does have a metal gasket, and these are okay to reuse for now. But you gotta make sure you put the gasket on, because oil gets into these passages. It's a really loud plane. Yeah, oil gets into these passages, and this is what adjusts your variable valve timing. Okay, so you want to make sure you put it back on with the gasket, and the power plug is that green one right there hanging. And you want to torque it probably about another 10 to 15 pounds. Most of these top end bolts do not require a lot of torque. 10 to 15 pounds is it. That's all I really do, because I don't want to break them. I don't care what OEM standards say. It's good enough. Now these, of course, on the intake manifold themselves, I think these are up to 35. I'm going to do about 25 to 30 on these, and that's it. I don't want to break those either. Those can handle more torque. I just don't want to go crazy with the torque on those. But the other bolts, like these guys, they can't take much torque. They will snap. Especially since those are all original bolts. They're old. They're toast. You can snap them very easily. So you need to be careful with that. I've learned from experience on other cars. But yeah, so I just want to remind you, both of these have metal gaskets. They're okay to reuse now. If you take them off again, I recommend putting on a new gasket. But this first time taking it off should be okay. But yeah, so let me go ahead and reconnect everything back up in the back, and then we're gonna go ahead and do the front bank. All right, so it's a little bit brighter out here. But to recap, basically, go ahead and throw on the intake first. These bolts starting from the corners, and then that one, and then that one, and then the middle, exact middle one. I did about 30 pounds on those. Should be nice and tight, good enough. But that, and then you reach to the back, which I'm going to climb over. I found it's a little bit easier to see them. There's the two bolts right there. I did not torque them. I put them tight. Can't get a torque wrench in those. And then, of course, that one right there. Those are the bracket bolts. Then you get this hose back on, get this back connected, get this hose back on, and if you touch the O2 sensor hose or power connector, put that back on. If you touched either one of those for the solenoid, put that on. Put that hose, put those hoses, put that sensor back on, put that solenoid back on, or sensor and solenoid, I don't know which one's which. Reconnect it to the wire harness. And then you put this sensor back in, reconnect that hose right there. Then you got this coolant hose right there. That'd be that one right there, coolant hose. And then, of course, the throttle body, power cable right there. And then underneath here, on this side is another coolant hose. And then you put the air tube back on. Again, remember, I only put on the rubber, took off the rubber tubing, put the breather hose back on, put the rubber tubing back in. I didn't touch the map sensor or anything like that. And then it's good to go. But just to make sure that you did your work right, let's go ahead and start it up, because it absolutely should. I cut into the car because I got a bit of a mess. I got a blower issue, don't worry about that. Alright. There we go. Yep. Running pretty good. Running on all six. For sure. 100% guaranteed. Running on all six right now. Oh yeah. Now let me turn it off, because I still gotta do the front bank. One thing I will say, burned a lot of oil. And maybe some water from the rain. Yeah, so that's one thing you gotta be careful with. Yes, I did change my shirt because I got wet when it started raining. Um, Same time as when I started this video. Just, you know, went through a rainstorm. Yeah, so for those of you wondering why I was burning off smoke, remember when we took out the spark plugs? Oil still got into the cylinders. I did use a straw to siphon as much as I could out, but there was still oil in there, as well as possibly some rain. A couple of drops might have gotten into. I don't know for sure, but it sounds healthy. So I'm just going to attribute it to the oil that got into the cylinders as I took out the spark plugs. But right away, I can already hear that it's running a lot better than it was prior to doing this. So a definite improvement. I can only guarantee that when I do the front bank, when I get this bank done, which I'm going to do next, it should have a lot better fuel efficiency as well as running better. So let's go ahead and do this one, because this is super easy to do on this side. Alright, so now with the front bank, it's a lot simpler, We got to remove the coils, we got to remove this, we got to remove this breather down here, got to remove this solenoid, the 10 bolts, just like before. And then we have the O2 sensor that we're going to remove the power plug for. And then there's a sensor that goes way down there. Ooh, it flies now because the rain's gone. Right there, take that off, take it off this hook, off that hook, off this hook, off of this hook, and bam, this all moves out of your way. And that's it. These come off, those move, everything moves out of the way. It's a lot simpler to do, obviously. So let's go ahead and do this side. Alright, so now that we have the valve cover off, as you can see, it's really only leaking from the front a little bit. The rest of it is pretty good. But you can also notice that there's a bit of a gold color to it. That's more healthier than the back bank was, because there's actually oil flowing in here. I can't tell you how much oil is in the engine yet, but there's at least oil flowing here, unlike the back one. Yeah, so there was some oil in the tubes, so I did have to go ahead and clean that out. I did siphon it out of the pistons, but of course whatever's left in there is going to burn off anyways. Now let me show you this with the valve cover. So basically, when you take the RTV, you want to put it around this ring, this brownish color ring. These are the tube seals. Again, he said that you could take it out, put new ones in. That's just kind of sketchy. Or of course you just buy a new one and it comes with new valve seals. But I didn't get the new ones. Wasn't quite prepared for that. So we're just going to RTV it for now. And then next week I'm going to order new valve covers and stick them on. But yeah, so you put it on the insides, put it here. Then you seat it on top of here, push it all the way down so the tube seals push through. Take it off, wipe off the excess, put the gasket, put it on, torque it, let it rest. Remember, you don't want to run the engine. I'm not running the engine until tomorrow, so that way it has some time to dry and cure. But yeah, so that's basically it. After that, you put everything back together. New spark plugs going in, new ignition coils going on. I was going to change out that cam sensor there. Got a new one as well. And then you got to put the solenoid on. You got to torque it. It's going to be this one, 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 and that one. In that order. Remember, 10 to 15 pounds at the most. If not, you're going to break these bolts and it's going to be a nightmare. But that's it. You know, it's super simple doing it the front. And after you do all that, congratulations, you successfully replaced spark plugs, ignition coils, cam sensors, and most importantly, your valve cover gaskets on your VQ35 DE. Of course, this is for Altimas, for Maximas, Muranos, Xteras, Frontiers, the Quest, anything that runs on front-wheel drive V6 from Nissan. or all-wheel drive V6, because they have the T transmission that goes to the front wheels and to the back wheels. But anything that has a V6 platform like this is applicable to it. Now there might be some slight differences, but for the majority of how it's done, this will work. And of course for other models too, 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, all I believe have most of these aluminum intakes. 2009, 2010, I think it's 2011 that they started doing the plastic ones. I don't remember, have to look it up. But of course, if you don't have a plastic one, if you got a nice aluminum intake, this will apply. If you got a different intake, then you got a different solution with taking off your intake. But all the rest usually is about the same. So of course, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell notification, and you'll get, you know, alerts for whenever I upload new stuff, new content. And then, of course, if you like the video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. If you have any questions, feel free, because everybody does ask questions. I do answer. I still, on my other videos, I still am answering questions. So go ahead. As long as it's something I can answer through, you know, text, I'll answer. If it's something that needs to be done in person, I'm going to tell you, I can't answer. Take it in. But yes, this, of course, like I said, this is a lot easier. It's still, you still have to have some knowledge, so you know what you're disconnecting and what to reconnect. But again, it's quite doable if you're on a budget. If you're tight on money, you can do it yourself. But yeah, so with that, I'm gonna wrap it up here. Oh, don't forget, any tools or equipment are in the links below. You guys can check it out. I'll get you some sweet deals on some ratchets, on some extensions, you know, some anti-seize. If you need brake parts cleaner, if you need RTV, gasket maker, anything like that, gloves. I usually get good deals from Amazon, and I always put them in the links so that way you guys can get them. I do make a little bit of a commission, but that's neither here nor there. You get good deals anyways. Shopping off Amazon, usually I find good quality stuff anyways. Because I know there's a lot of stuff not so quality, but at least with this stuff, quality is my #1 priority. So I will find the I'll get good deals for you guys. It's all gonna be in the links below. But yeah, but that's it. I'm gonna wrap it up because it's about to start raining. Even though there's sun, there's clouds too. And as you can see, I already had to put the rain guard on because I felt a few drops already. But yeah, so that's it. Hope you guys liked it. Hope you found this informational and helpful. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave the questions. But I'm gonna let you guys go for now because I need to wrap this up. So I'll catch you guys later.